Hello, and welcome, guys. Another live stream, another good session, hopefully, guys, chatting about cybersecurity and all kinds of things like that. Hopefully, answering all of your questions and having another great evening. So, we'll have to wait and see who we're going to get into our live today. Welcome, guys, coming in. Another evening, another live, chatting all things cybersecurity. Hopefully we're going to get some great questions and we're going to help some people. Hey, yeah, good stuff. I'm good. How are you? How are guys feeling in the new year? Hopefully some great New Year's resolutions to land yourself a cybersecurity job. Good to hear. Good to hear that people are well. I guess while people just coming in, so would you use services that they say they can delete your info from the internet? No, not really. There's nothing important that I want to delete from the internet. And especially, I guess depends in what situation you are. But, I think building personal brand and putting down information on the internet is really helpful for, cybersecurity career and your job search, building the personal brand. So I wouldn't necessarily need those services. Does someone with computer information systems degree need international security like Security Plus? No, not necessarily. I think we always talk about, certifications and degrees in these kind of we're talking about certifications, degrees, and all kind of things. And it really depends on the situation. Like once you get a degree, what else you're going to learn from Security Plus? Yes, it's, it can be and usually is a requirement on job specs. So it really depends how are you searching for the job and how you're applying for the job. Sometimes, yes, you need to satisfy some of the job spec requirements, but, I think most of the time, degree is going to beat that, the Security Plus requirement. So I think it should be okay. Let me just see what it was. Like phone numbers sold to advertisers. Yeah, but it depends, Missa. Nowadays, like for example, it depends on the phone you use. But for example, my phone, iPhones nowadays have they have a feature that any call that appears to be spam, you can straight away block and you can redirect for them to answer some questions. So I think nowadays these kind of services becoming obsolete. Next question. I work in help desk support. I want to transition into junior SOC analyst role. Is that possible? Yeah, of course it's possible. It's all about, just acquiring, one certificate such as, Security Plus. It's about gaining skills, understanding, depends what you've done before, but, upgrading your knowledge in networking. So, you don't necessarily need Network Plus certificate, but you need the knowledge from Network Plus. Then you need to pass Security Plus. And then it's about building skills. So obviously it's the next step. About, I'm talking most of the time, things like platforms like TryHackMe. Then it's about, building home labs and acquiring skills that you're going to need. Learn how to use SIEM, learn how to use EDR, learn how to investigate incidents, how to push logs into various avenues, how to look through logs and stuff like that. But yeah, of course it's possible. So how can I show my degree when applying? Will they ask for Security Plus? But they're going to ask, but you have to remember, again, there's an important thing to mention here. Most of the job specs and requirements and what they ask is a wish list. You do not necessarily need to tick every single box. It's all about skills. And the thing is, again, you have to bridge the gap again. depends on the degree that you've done. But degree, again, is not going to teach you security tools and think about how, like a security person. So as long as you covered the basics and showcase, you know how to do vulnerability management, you know how to investigate incidents, you know how to use Team, EDR, and all of those tools, then yeah. Happy Gray. Yeah, no problem. Considered a weak cert, but I want to go through CompTIA A+ just to learn, no prior experience. I think, you can't knock these down. I always say, Lone, you're not wasting time. If you haven't got any prior technological knowledge, I always say, you can't skip A+. I would say one thing, though. You don't necessarily need A+ certificate or pass the exam, but you definitely need knowledge from the A+. So it's an important thing to watch the videos, understand how operating systems, how hardware works. You need to know the information from it. You need to learn hardware, operating systems, then networking, and only then you should go in cybersecurity. I'm very confused when, these influencers suggest people jump straight into Security Plus. No, you can't do that without the grounding and fundamental knowledge behind it before you go into that. So, yeah. What about threat intelligence? What about it, Mike PH? I'm not sure what's the question here. So, yeah, hope that makes sense, Lo. But yeah, guys, bring some questions. Just a bit about me, those especially who are new. I've been in cybersecurity for over 10 years. I'm a chief information security officer for a fintech organization. I also run my own cybersecurity business. I'm a board advisor for a number of cybersecurity businesses. I run a Cyber Diaries podcast on YouTube. Maybe you have seen some of my videos on TikTok. Obviously, go a YouTube channel. I do a lot of posting on LinkedIn, especially about cybersecurity leadership and stuff like that. So, I'm here to and essentially trying to give back and help people to, cut through the noise and cut through the crap that's, being told about cybersecurity, and hopefully answer some of the questions, because I always say to people, I don't necessarily have time to answer every single DM and answer every single comments. And especially with, the lazy comments that I normally get, but this is kind of my way to help people and talk to and help you guys understand what cybersecurity is. Will Google IT support help me with help desk job and stuff? Do you mean Google IT support certificate, or what is Google IT support? I'm not sure what are you talking about. Suggest a tool of hacking crypto wallets. No, I'm not suggesting stuff to break laws and things like that. How can I prove that I have a good amount of knowledge about networks? I just don't have money for a cert. But again, surely we talked about this. Certificate is not about having a certificate. It's about having the knowledge. You can bypass the requirements of certificate. I always say, in my personal opinion, the only cert you need is Security Plus. Once you cover that, that's the most important thing. Knowledge is, you can showcase and do labs, learn how to use Wireshark, watch Network Chuck videos. You can buy, it's not necessarily big money. Go on Udemy, buy Jason Dion's Network Plus course. That's like $13. I think everyone can scrape $13. But just getting that knowledge, you don't necessarily need a certificate, but you need the knowledge from it. So yeah, Gil Martins, is DevOps a good start for cybersecurity? Yeah, I mean, any technical discipline, whether it's help desk, whether it's IT, whether it's DevOps, all of them absolutely lends itself to your career into cybersecurity. So yeah, of course. How to start the digital forensics career? Well, you need to, again, I'm not really familiar about certifications. I think there are a few. But it's all about, again, gaining skills, understanding how to take and preserve evidence, how to investigate, for example, how to do digital forensics on a hard drive, how to do digital forensics on a phone. For example, I did masters in digital forensics and cybersecurity. So it's about learning how to use the tools. There is tools like, I don't remember what we use now. There was a couple of tools there that you can do a lot, and you need to learn how to use. You need to learn, what evidence is important, how to uncover those evidence. So, but again, you have to understand, Kalindra. I don't think digital forensics is a entry level career. You need to start somewhere else and then gain skills, and you can move into digital forensics. But out of nowhere and from new, I don't think you'll be able to start in digital forensics. Yes, Google IT support certificate. Well, yeah, again, it's not about certifications. It's not about getting certificates. It's about acquiring knowledge. If I have not come across about Google IT support certificate, but if it covers enough knowledge and develops some of the skills, then yeah, of course, by all means. Gura, I think you misunderstood what I said. Udemy certs are not useless. There are Udemy certs. I'm not talking about Udemy certs. I'm talking about buying Network Plus, Security Plus from Udemy. So you guys need to listen to what I'm saying. I'm not talking to buy Udemy certs. How many projects should you have for SOC Analyst Level 1 job application? I don't think there is a number, Doctor, but you should be comfortable with a couple of things. You should be comfortable with vulnerability management, so learning how to use OpenVAS, an open source vulnerability scanner, learning how to use EDR or XDR, so such as Wazoo, who comes 2-in-1, so you can use SIEM, learning how to use Wireshark, and then setting up a lab and understanding, for example, I always talk about 3 virtual machines, Kali Linux, Windows Server, and then either Security Onion or Wazoo server. And then it's about running and using Kali Linux and doing attacks on Windows Server, then investigating them with Wireshark from network perspective, looking at Wazoo from EDR and SIEM perspective, and then learning, looking how those attacks work. It's all about, I always talk about building personal brand is the most important thing that you guys are going to do in your cybersecurity career. So use the LinkedIn, use your blogs, and anything that you can to document how are you building those skills, how are you building those projects, teach other people as well. It's an amazing thing when what happens when you start teaching others, because you need to be able to understand in order to teach someone else. Would you know about SafePay Team? I don't know much about SafePay Team. Why are you asking, Alexino? Do you use Hydra? I don't use many tools anymore, Obito, because obviously I'm in leadership, so I'm not, I haven't done much of it. But yeah, back in the day, I used Hydra, I used John the Ripper, I used Hashcat, I used Mimikatz and all kinds of tools, Metasploit. So yeah, loads of stuff like that. It was really cool stuff to play around with. Well, the most important recommendation, Nehemiah, is that you need to figure out what you want to do in cybersecurity. Yeah, Hashcat is an amazing tool, Obito. Yeah, it's some great stuff. And especially, I think you can do a bit more than John the Ripper. So I think once you learn John the Ripper, then it's upgrading to Hashcat is a good way to go. But yeah, I can't recommend what to learn about cybersecurity, Nehemiah. First of all, you need to do your homework and understand what roles exist in cybersecurity and what you want to do. Barb says, what do you specialize in cybersecurity? I've done pretty much everything there is. So again, those of you who are new, I can kind of overview a bit of my career, Carbs, but I started my career in SOCs. So I was working in a SOC, then I managed a SOC, then I was hired to architect and build SOCs, and I wrote my master's dissertation about how to build a SOC using MITRE ATT&CK and make sure that your SOC aligns to your specific threats. Then I went into cloud security engineering, working in, worked with AWS and Azure, cloud security architecture. Then I went to build and architect DevSecOps frameworks, application security programs. I built pen testing strategies for businesses. And then essentially 3 years ago, I became a CISO and I'm working in cybersecurity leadership. So essentially I run the cybersecurity team. I build a cybersecurity strategy for the business and report our strategy to essentially to the CEO and to the board. Do you use Netbird and Tailscale? No, I do not. How can developers protect against supply chain attacks? Well, there are tools nowadays. What was it? I was actually advising one of the companies. So there's a few things obviously now. is looking at software composition analysis, static code analysis, dynamic code analysis, but then there are supply chain sort of supply chain is really hard to manage. You just essentially need to be able to detect changes and incoming sort of, take stock and understand what software and what repositories and what kind of versions that you're using, and make sure you're doing things like integrity checks. You're doing hashing, and obviously understanding, how to measure. What OS are you using right now? Well, I work in a Microsoft house, so day job I use Windows. Spare time I use Ubuntu, Obito. I have 5 months before I start uni for CNS. Would you recommend doing in that time? I can't recommend anything because it all depends what you want to do in your future career. You have to guys understand these questions doesn't really make sense. You can't recommend something out of the fly because do you want to be a GRC analyst? Do you want to be a pen tester? Do you want to be a SOC analyst? Do you want to be a security engineer? It completely changes what the answer is. Did you do A levels? No, I didn't grow up in UK, so I didn't do A levels. How about blue team? What about blue team? What grade did you get in GCSE Com? I didn't do GCSE Com Sci. I'm starting to worry about AI replacing entry-level roles, or at least reducing the need of entry-level roles. Yeah, in some way it is happening nowadays, and the entry-level sort of barrier is becoming harder. But it's not impossible, and especially I always say to people, Calendra, is the most important thing that you're going to do is, as I say, building personal brand. I know some influencers saying, you need to apply to 1,000 jobs before you get a chance. But there are ways to get referrals. There are ways to meet people and get, meet hiring managers, meet other cybersecurity professionals. There is other ways of getting the job than just applying. And that's the way you're going to differentiate yourself. That's the way you need to show to the world that you are better. My comments are littered with people, I've just done CCNA. Can I get a cybersecurity job? Of course you can't. People do the bare minimum and then they expect, to land a high paying cybersecurity job. That doesn't happen. Cybersecurity is hard. It's very rewarding, but it's hard. You need to do a lot of preparation. You need to be able to and prepare yourself and study a lot. And you need to be able to continuously develop yourself. Because in cybersecurity, if you could not continuously learn new skills and develop yourself, you're going to get left behind. So, yeah, it's nothing to be worried. I encourage and I love AI, and I think AI is going to be a great help for us in our careers. But, it's going to differentiate people who, people who can use AI and people who can't use AI. So I think the only thing that you need to do is make sure that you learn how to use AI, how to secure AI. But yeah, what's the best role for someone that's not tech savvy and wants to be on the soft side of cyber? Jay, that's GRC, governance, risk, and compliance. So I even dropped a video, I think this morning or yesterday, about what is GRC analyst, what do they do, what's kind of their day-to-day. Why cybersec is not that popular? I mean, isn't amazing and everyone should learn the basics. I think cybersecurity is popular, but I think cybersecurity is getting very popular. I think, maybe the popularity lags because cybersecurity is not easy. You need to learn a lot of technological, fundamentals and understand technology in kind of at fundamental level. And then you need to understand security knowledge. There's a lot of knowledge and skills needed before you can get into cybersecurity. So I think that may be steering some people away from it. But yeah, how to get his or her first job in SOC Tier 1? By acquiring the skills, doctor. Acquiring the skills, acquiring at least one cert, building your knowledge and stuff like that. Do you have any GIC certs? No, Mouse, I don't. GIC certs are like $5,000 a pop. I'm not spending that kind of money. The only people who have GIC certs is the ones who, worked in very big organizations that pay for their certs. Nobody's spending $5,000 for a certificate. I just graduated and having a hard time landing a job. I want to be a GRC analyst. Any advice? Well, Jay, you have to understand, and I always say to people, it's a very quick realization these days is that just having a degree does not guarantee you a job, and you're not going to get a job just getting a degree. Degree most of the time does not prepare you for the organization. Yes, you might get a graduate job, you might get a intern job, but any kind of degree nowadays is not enough to go into the field, because most of the degree programs does not teach you the tools, the skills that you need to be successful in a job. So you need to upskill yourself. You need to understand all of the cybersecurity frameworks. You need to understand, risk management. Obviously, I don't know what you've been taught in university, but there's a lot more, I think, upskilling needs to be done in GRC. And you need to be able to showcase how you know and acquire these skills. You need to build your building personal brand. I always say to people, the most important thing that you're going to do on your cybersecurity search, there's no excuse not to do that. You have to message 10 people a day on LinkedIn and connect 10 people a day on LinkedIn. That's 300 people a month. Find people who work in the GRC roles. Talk to them. Ask them how they broke into GRC analyst roles. Ask them for advice. Be respectful, obviously. Comment on their post. Get to learn. That's 300 people every single month. Those people are going to become your friends. Whenever roles appear in those companies, who they're going to refer? You. That's how you differentiate yourself, guys. You have to get off your bottom and do something. Be proactive. In cybersecurity, what does using the AI mean? Well, there's two things. Using AI in cybersecurity is, AI can do loads of things. AI is amazing at shifting through loads amount of data. So AI can do a lot of sort of low-level investigation, understand patterns and anomalies in logs. For example, in my organization currently, we are, creating about anywhere between 15 to 20 gigabytes worth of logs every single day. Now, to go through that and analyze those logs, AI is an amazing tool for it. AI can kind of do a next level of automation, because when we talk about automation, normally, automation is every single trigger, every single time action. So you have to create like a policy. When you add AI into automations, the AI can make decisions based on the data that's provided to it. So that's what we mean. What basics should I learn for SOC analyst level 1? Vulnerability management, security information and event management platforms, EDRs, how incidents happen, how to investigate incidents, how to look at logs and stuff like that. I got banned on my Kali. How can you get banned on your Kali, Obito? I don't understand. As a hiring manager, would you prefer someone with a good home lab or certificates? Home lab. Peace. I get in a lot of arguments with people on TikTok, especially I think people who don't even know what they're talking about. But I'm a hiring manager. I need someone who can do the job. Just because you have 10 certificates doesn't mean that you know how to use the job and the skills. Not necessarily home lab, but the skills. You can put in your CV that you built a home lab, but what did you do with that home lab? That's the most important thing, Peace. It's how you learned to actually investigate, how to think like a security professional, how to pull on a thread and get to the bottom to understand, what's the difference between two different vulnerabilities. How would you investigate? How would you understand when where this incident goes? That's way more important than Security Plus and all of these certs teach you the theory. It's an important thing, but that's what I always say. For example, you don't necessarily need to pass Security Plus exam. You need to have a knowledge from it. But I always say my hiring and the way I hire my teams is the most important things I always talk about is 2 A's: your attitude and your aptitude. Your passion for cybersecurity, for example, when I interview people, I always ask them, what's your personal development plan for the next 12 months? What you want to achieve, what you want to learn in the next 12 months. If you can't answer that, you're gone. Next thing, I always ask, you have to show passion. Where do you get your cybersecurity news from? What the most amazing book that you read? What, big breaches that made impression on you? These are the most important things that I want to know about people. Because once you have passion and attitude to learning, I can teach you everything else. I can't teach you to become passionate and be proactive. That's either you have it or not. Yeah, exactly, Obito. Yeah, exactly, Mouse. Yeah, certs. You can memorize that information, but and that's what it is. Most of the multiple choice exams are just there for memorization. Yes, Angel. But as I say, I kind of mentioned you probably just joined now. CompTIA Trifecta is an amazing stuff to starting out. But I would always say, depends where you want to start out. If you want to start out at the IT and help desk, then you only need A plus or maybe Network plus. If you want to go straight into cybersecurity, it's obviously going to be much harder. But I would say that when you're doing CompTIA Trifecta, you definitely need knowledge from A plus and from Network plus. You don't necessarily need certificates from them, but you definitely need to watch the videos and understand the material. I would say you only need Security Plus as a certificate and pass the exam if money is tight. If you can do all three by all means. But sometimes people struggle to get money for the exams, but you definitely need knowledge from all three. Yes, Mouse. Yeah, curiosity, passion is the most. But the problem is, so many people don't. I can tell you even a funny story. I've been talking to many cybersecurity leaders and CISOs, and recently who've been hiring people. And they say, now I think they were hiring 8 people they were interviewing. Out of 8 people, 6 of them used AI during interviews. And it became completely obvious that people are, asking to repeat the questions or, AI is transcribing and giving them answers. And I don't know what people are really thinking, because the problem is, second stage interview is in the office. So if you passed first one with AI, how the hell are you going to pass the next interview, with in the office in person? So I missed some questions on Twitch. Jumping into cyber is not the move. I learned a couple of months ago going into IT, reading about it different, but networking and fundamentals are key. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, Sniper. Very important. Sebi, I would say pen testing, if you're completely starting new, it's nearly impossible to get a pen testing job. I always say pen testing is not an entry level role. The biggest advice that I can do to anyone is that get into any cybersecurity role and then build your skills and knowledge, and then you can move into pen testing. But yeah, pen testing is not the entry level role. Where do you recommend to start learning to be a good SOC analyst? Try HackMe, Blue Team Labs online is good, and then obviously building your own home lab, Nehemia. That's the most important. I don't do teaching, Taku. But yeah, can you give example for a home lab, like what VMs and applications we need to start? I already talked about it, but you can, Alex. First of all, there is a video on my YouTube. There's a link on my bio. There's a YouTube where I talk about the best home lab for SOC. But just briefly explaining it, you need, I think, I suggest always Kali Linux, Windows Server, and Wazoo or Security Onion. So three virtual machines connected into a network, and then that's the starting point. Obito, I really like TryHackMe, but TryHackMe is, I always say to people, is TryHackMe, you kind of start. You start building the skills because everything is simulated for you. Once you passed, a couple of paths on TryHackMe, then it's all about building your own home lab. Because I always say, TryHackMe is great, but everything is there done for you. Whenever you're building something your own and you're building virtual machines and building networks and connecting everything, you're going to learn so much more because you're going to come across problems. You're going to have to debug things. So, home lab is the best thing you're going to do. Don't guys look for shortcuts and going, for websites on da-da-da. How much on average do SOC a level 1 earn? It depends where you are in parts of the world, Doctor, but if I'm talking about UK terms, it's anywhere from 25 to 35,000 pounds a year at the very beginning. I'm eager to go beyond my degree. Can we please connect on LinkedIn? Yeah, you can connect on LinkedIn. Anyone can connect on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is currently, I think, my biggest platform. Yeah, Let's Defend is another good platform. Yeah, piece. Which OS works best for MacBook, or which computer should I get that works best for these systems? Doesn't matter what computer you get, Jay. If you want to build a home lab, all you need is you need virtualization software, so stuff like VirtualBox or VMware. There's another one that people now use. I don't remember the name, but yeah. Home lab, Kali Linux, Windows Server, and either Wazoo or Security Onion. Yeah, good stuff. Good to see people learning, Nehemia. Yeah, keep working hard, keep learning, keep developing skills, and hopefully 2026 brings success. Proxmox, VMware, or Hyper-V. I haven't used Proxmox. I think Proxmox is kind of the new one, but I always used VirtualBox, Alexino. So, but it depends. They all kind of do the same thing. It doesn't really matter what you do, but yeah. Yeah, exactly, Mouse. Yeah. What is the best way for personal branding? LinkedIn. Build a network. I always say to people, there is no excuse not to building a network and posting daily. I've been posting daily on LinkedIn pretty much since I started on. Daily. I mean Monday to Friday when I'm working, but I've been posting on LinkedIn for the last pretty much 10 years when I was in cybersecurity, and especially last year, I kind of grew. I got over 18,000 followers, and some of the posts that I make on LinkedIn. For example, I'll give you a couple of examples, guys. Some of the posts that I made on LinkedIn over the last couple of months, some posts go over 300,000 views. So based off one of the posts, CSO is writing a security article in a very big reputable cybersecurity magazine for me. I'm going to speak for a cybersecurity conference in Athens in 2 weeks. People invite me in various kind of podcasts. I'll get board advisory opportunities from cybersecurity vendors and stuff like that. So there's loads of opportunities that come from that. Found out my chat GPT is giving me wrong. How can I train it to be more intuitive on cybersecurity? Well, you can't really train it. Well, that's what I'm saying. That's another problem. People are relying so much on AI and ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a tool and a helper. You can't replace your own thinking and relying on it especially for cybersecurity things. It hallucinates. It creates facts that are not factual. Use Google. Use reputable sources. Find information. Talk with other professionals. ChatGPT is not the way to learn about cybersecurity. There's no really way of knowing, Jay. It's just you can pick up from languages. Bots obviously sound generic and stuff like that. What are you thinking is better in terms of security, Cisco or FortiGate? It depends. Depends for what, Alexino. There is no better. Each company has good tools for specific applications. But for example, most of these organizations nowadays, like that's why I always talk. I think, for example, CCNA. I think CCNA is becoming obsolete. Yes, it teaches you some good networking knowledge, but if you have to think about, CCNA is built around Cisco hardware. Most organizations that are currently moving into the cloud, they're not using Cisco devices for like firewalls that they used to use before. Nobody's using switches and these networking devices. It's all happening nowadays in the cloud, and it requires different knowledge. There's a link in my bio, Doctor. Channel called is CTRL+ALT+DEFEND. What about Reddit Lambda? Not sure. There is a question in here. How many years did it take you to reach the role you're in now? Jay, it took me about 7 years to get to cybersecurity leadership. How hard is to get your... Okay, I start about 1 year ago. I work on dual booting with Kali. I have 100 labs on Hack the Box and 50 write-ups plus some CTF 20. And almost finished the Wi-Fi penetration test on Hack the Box Academy plus some AD enumeration, etc. I want to know your opinion if I have any chance to get a job. It's going to be hard, Seb. But the one thing I will say, obviously, I don't know what other, pen testing. If you look now, if you search on LinkedIn, Seb, out of 100 roles, how many you're going to find entry-level pen testing roles? There's not really that. So you have to be really, really good. From what you said, it's a good start, but I would expect you to have either OSCP or PNPT to increase your chances. And then if you're really good, and as you say, if you really spent a year and you got amazing skills, you have a chance. But most of the time, I say people, it's really, really hard to get straight into pen testing. Is Reddit suitable to ask about pen test? You can ask anywhere, Lambda, but you have to be mindful of who you ask and what answers you're going to get. You have to find people who know what they're talking about instead of, just someone blabbing about who haven't worked a day in their life being a pen tester. Cyber is in computer science. Why do roles ask you to know Python and some programming? I'm not sure what you mean if cyber isn't. Computer science obviously isn't important because you work in cyber, you work with computers, so you can't say it's not computer science. And in some roles, yes, you will need to know Python. For example, pen testing. Security engineers use Python for automating tasks. You're always going to need some level of programming, but you don't need to be a coder, for example. Programming, depends how you look at it, but Bash is a programming language that you use to use Linux. Use PowerShell in Windows. So you need some knowledge of it, but you don't need to be, you don't need to know necessarily like JavaScript or C++ or C# and stuff like that. What competence do I need to be a good bug bounty hunter? John, you need essentially, bug bounty is similar to pen testing. You need to be able to find gaps and vulnerabilities in systems, being able to, understand at the ground level, how systems work, how applications work, how to, run and discover various kind of things like, SQL injection, cross-site scripting, and all kinds of it. Nowadays, obviously, it's much more difficult, but you need to look at logic flaws and stuff like that. That's kind of the stuff you need to do. Okay, good stuff, Seb. Yeah, do CPTS, and then OSCP. I think, I always talk, pen testing terms. I think two gold standards are OSCP and PNPT. I think those two kind of really the one that set you apart. I build 120 workers for pen testing. Okay. Most people think that you can break into cybersecurity in months. Yeah, I mean, you can break in months, but not in a couple of months. So, for example, I that's why I talk so passionately about. 10 years ago, I built myself a self-learning path. I didn't do no degree. I broke into cybersecurity without degrees. I just did a couple of certificates. I found a mentor, and I did loads of home labs, loads of exercises. And, that's why I talk about personal branding, because I got my first job because I went on to webinar and I presented what is MITRE ATT&CK. But I got my first job of after 8 months. So 8 months hard work, hard studying, never ending, passing network plus, security plus, and I think I did one Azure set. I don't remember, was it AZ500 or something like that? But yeah, essentially, yeah, I spent 8 months, studying before I got first job. As I say, I spent a lot of time on LinkedIn, networking, showcasing my skills, going on webinars and meeting people, going to conferences, because that's how I think, that's the best way to differentiate yourself, is, how you're going to get your first job. Much better and much easier than just blindly applying to hundreds and hundreds of roles. So yeah, keep the questions coming, guys. I'm going to spend maybe another 10-15 minutes. Where does one get webinars? Well, you just need to, where does one get everything, Doctor? It's all about, Googling, meeting people, finding cybersecurity communities, whether it's Discord, whether it's, going to events. Like, for example, I always say, most of the towns in the world have some form of B-sides. Depends on where you live, but going to B-sides, going to any kind of junior level cybersecurity conferences, meeting like-minded people, hanging out in all kinds of places, you get to meet and learn people. And DEF CON I think is a bit stretched, because DEF CON normally is extortionately expensive to get into there. But yeah, there are various, there are SANS communities. Yeah, there's loads of places, you just need to search. John says, I have CEH. Is this a good certification in cybersecurity? Personally, I don't rate CH. I think CH is a pen testing cert that's multiple choice exam, and it teaches you only theory. I only think people should only get CH if they are applying to like US government jobs, because I think that's the only place where you can find it, because you can still find it on job specs, but I personally don't rate it. And people, always ask about it, because I created, I think about 5 days ago, my top 10 cybersecurity certificates, and I didn't put CH in there, and people keep asking why CH is not there. So, because I don't rate it. I think CH, and especially EC Council, I think it's questionable organization. Yeah, exactly. So, it's all about hanging out with these kind of conferences. I'm sure there is more than that, but yeah, IC2 community, yeah. So, for example, I'm doing a webinar for IC2 community soon about cybersecurity leadership and stuff like that. No, I have never used Zabbix, Alexino. Yeah, you can. Well, what about CYSA Plus after Security Plus? Yeah, you can do it. But again, there is no necessarily need. You guys have to remember, and I think sometimes you get too fixated on security certificates. Once you've done Security Plus, I don't see a need of doing CYSA Plus. I would differentiate and do something and think about what I'm going to do after SOC. So I would build skills in like cloud security engineering stuff. Like I would do, if you want to do something after Security Plus, I would much rather you do Microsoft SC200, because that's specific security analyst cert that teaches you all about security ecosystem and security tool sets like Sentinel, Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Cloud. So I would do that, but then I would look at where I want to go after the SOC and then build skills in that space. Do I need to do certificates to do bug hunting? No, you don't. You just sign up to platforms like BugCrowd, HackerOne, and you just do it. You can make a lot of money if you're really good in there. what were you doing before you decided to get in cybersecurity? I was working in physical security. So yeah, I was back in the day. I went to university. I studied motorsport engineering piece. But then basically, I think in year 2 they said, "Oh, you need to work for free to develop skills and da da da." You know, and I was like, and I was just supporting myself doing physical security during university. So then I was like, I quit university because I knew like that wasn't really the path that I can pursue. So after doing a couple of years of physical security, I was like, I understood very quickly that in UK, in order to reach leadership positions for physical security, you needed to go to army in UK because all the kind of higher up positions were kind of shared between army buddies. So I was like, I need to think about where I can use some security knowledge and add to where the world is going, and kind of technology, security, merge the two together. And I kind of just thought that's the best solution. And probably that's the best decision I made in my life 10 years ago. And, you know, I've never looked back. And, you know, there is a saying, you know, where they say, find the job that you love, and you're never going to work a day in your life. And it's kind of been like that for the last 10 years. Yeah, no problem. Cybersecurity has a lot of domain, not only hacking. Yes, indeed. Yeah. There's, you know, people I think, you know, obviously seen movies or heard about hacking, and they think that's the only way to go in there. But it's, you know, it's near impossible to get into hacking out of the, you know, complete newbie. Yeah, exactly, doctor. Yeah. Yeah, you learn the basics, you learn some of the commands, some of the stuff in Try Hack Me you can do. I think there are some paths in there you can pass. But then after that, the most important thing is actually doing your own home labs. There are various write-ups, you know, as I say, there is my YouTube video, there is write-ups where people done it before, and then it's about, you know, trying various things. It's about replicating attacks, replicating scenarios that you would come across in the real world, and developing skills. That's the only way you can actually, you know, build the necessary skills, but not only that, you know, build enough knowledge how to answer interview questions and talk about, you know, various stuff that you've done before when you don't have actual experience. But yeah, keep the questions coming, guys. If you got anything else to ask, there is no stupid questions, you know, but I just want to relay some of the stuff. Again, you know, it's up to you what you guys do with this information. I just talk from my perspective what I did, what I think is the best, and how I hire people. You know, you might, you know, I think the beautiful thing is in cybersecurity that there is no one clear predefined path. You know, every person has its own personal story, and have different ways how they broke into cybersecurity, how they achieved success, how you became successful. And I think that's kind of the beauty of it. You can pave your own path, but, you know, you have to get proactive, and you have to do you know, the hard work, because that's what gets rewarded. I think, you know, your perseverance, your hard work, your dedication and passion for continuously developing yourself, that's what's going to shine and help you get through interviews, get through, you know, get essentially in that journey finding the job. It's possible, Sativa, but it's very highly unlikely, especially for level 1. Normally, you know, these kind of remote positions you get as you become more senior and more advanced. Because if you think about it, you know, it's really hard to train someone online when you are not there in person. And it's very rarely that, you know, UK companies will hire people from, you know, very, very far away. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's harder. It's much harder than, you know, say getting a SOC manager role or getting, senior security engineer role remote, yeah, it's much easier, but not in the beginning of your career. You have to do sort of the hard graft, the learning, being around professional and experienced people is going to advance your development way quicker than, you being somewhere thousands of miles away. And I think that's why it's much rarer occurrence that you're going to find this. Hey, Anonymous, welcome back. How can you leverage quantum computing to cybersecurity? Well, you can't leverage. I think nobody has access to quantum computing, and it's not going to get anywhere near being available anytime soon. But I think the one thing that's going to be, well, obviously, quantum computing is going to be way faster and it's going to do way much more. So the one thing which I think in the near horizon, what we need to think about, while quantum computing becomes available, obviously most of the encryption that we currently use is going to become obsolete. We're going to be able to crack it within a second. So there are organizations and there are people who are developing quantum resistant encryption, and I think that's where kind of the current efforts in cybersecurity are going towards. So mostly having to look for a job that is on site and willing to sponsor a visa. Yeah, most likely, doctor. Yeah, that's where you have to start with. Once you build enough knowledge and skills and experience, it opens up way more opportunities. But probably in the beginning, it's much more unlikely. Okay. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, I think somebody was asking here about bug bounty. It's if I need to move on to other roles in cybersecurity, where do you advise me to go after that 1 year? I mean, it really depends. I think SOC is a good path if you haven't got any skills and experience so far. So SOC is a great starting point. I always say to people, start in a SOC, build a couple of years of experience, the grounded knowledge, and then it opens up pathways into wherever you want to go. Because I went into SOC and then I went into security engineering. But yeah, I would say that. Okay, good stuff. Yeah. Watching watching people do people do the same thing is a great way of learning. Yeah. I'm sure it helps you, Anonymous. I always say that there are some great free resources and there's some great content people putting out on YouTube. So it's you are so guys. I think especially nowadays, you guys are so fortunate. Imagine breaking into cybersecurity 20 years ago when there was no online courses, there was nothing like that. How much more harder it was. Now there is information abundance that you can find everything within a click of a button and it's free. Stuff like YouTube. It was non-existent 20 years ago or so. So I think the information access is becoming so much more easier. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we use a lot of JWT tokens and stuff like that. Hey, Redin, I'm good, mate. I'm good. How are you? How is your time management and studies going on, Redin? Did you find some time to actually do some stuff? And did you healed? Kind of joining near the end, Redin. I'm gonna shoot in a little while, but I think I'll probably do one more tomorrow because tomorrow I'm not going to gym, so I'm gonna have some time probably. So I'll probably drop an event, guys, if you want to join tomorrow as well. I'm gonna do another live. I love watching how they think every detail is important. Yeah. But if you're teaching, anonymous, I think it's important to not skip anything and showcase to the world, especially if, as you say, if you're creating content, as I did a couple of videos, like you want to explain people, how we think, how we come across these things. Is GitHub the best for your documentation and write-ups? Yeah, I think so. I think Doctor is between GitHub and LinkedIn, and especially I think when you build a bigger network on LinkedIn is probably even more important than GitHub. Oh, good. I'm getting better. I'm planning on starting soon. I'm gonna drop. You'll see I'm gonna drop. There's gonna be a link to the event, so you can subscribe and see how to get you on Telegram. You need to join my Telegram group piece. We just created. Actually, I forgot to mention, guys. So those of you who hadn't been in my previous lives, we created a Telegram group. I think we go up to now 26 people. So it's a group dedicated essentially for people like you guys who are either early in cybersecurity career, or you want to learn about cybersecurity. So you want to talk to people. You want to learn and study together. I think it's an amazing thing to have people who you can ask questions, who you can share your ideas, your development journey, and your learning experience with others. Makes the studying so much more easier. So if you want, just again there's links in some of the videos in my and the posts I made. There is a picture post that I put 6 reasons to join the Telegram community, so you'll find the link in there. Yeah, no problem, Redden. Yeah, I think I've done, what did I do? I do 4. So I'm gonna create another 6 videos. So there's gonna be some more roles. I'm gonna talk about CISO, talk about IAM and all others. So yeah, the video is gonna keep coming. So I'll try to explain most of the cybersecurity roles from that perspective, and yeah, it should be helpful because it talks a bit about kind of scripted. So it talks a bit sort of like a story of day to day of what these people do, and then add a couple of sets at the end, and yeah, should be helpful for the people. So yeah, I posted them on TikTok and YouTube. Okay, yeah. That book is amazing. So hopefully you'll be able to finish it, and you're gonna love, and you're gonna learn so much, and it's gonna hopefully shift the perspective in how you think about cybersecurity, because it takes a lot of years being in cybersecurity to understand what Greg Van der Gaast is talking in that book. But I think once you read it, it changes your perspective, which I think kind of short circuit how many years of experience you need to have in order to arrive at the same ideas and same thinking. So I think it's going to be really helpful for you. I discovered that building a home lab requires a large space on my laptop. It shouldn't require large space. It's all about because all you need the images of these 3 machines. So I think the images are not bigger than like 5 gigabytes. The one thing that you need, Doctor, is obviously you need enough RAM to run it. I think I always say you need to have at least 16 gigabytes of RAM to build these machines on virtualization, but you shouldn't need to have that large of a space. There is an analog of the Burp Suite tool called Kaido. What do you think about this tool? I don't think I've ever used Kaido. What else did I? There's something else I used before. Let me see. Oh yeah. So I used always Zap before, and I used Stackhawk. Yeah, I haven't used Kaido. What do you think? Do you like Kaido? Is it free though? Is for some of the tools as well? You know, there are some great tools, but if you can't have access and to play around and use the demo of it, then you know it becomes really. Yeah, I think so, Doctor. Yeah, yeah. I think LinkedIn is the best because you showing people how you're developing your skills, and you showing others, and you know you potentially are teaching people also how you know. I always say, you know, never underestimate, you know, whatever you put on LinkedIn. There's always going to be someone who's one step behind you. So it's always a great thing to do, and it's great help for others. And the bigger network you're going to build, the more people are going to see what you're currently doing. Because how many people are going to discover your GitHub? What you're going to do? You're going to put your GitHub on your CV, so only people potentially going to see that you are applying to roles. But LinkedIn potentially becomes way bigger. As I say, I've got posts that 300,000 people saw my post. So imagine the reach that it gets. You're probably not going to get that in the beginning, but you know it's all about building and becoming consistent. But yeah, I'm gonna have to love you guys and leave you. I'm gonna create tomorrow an event for tomorrow, so probably I'll probably do an hour later, maybe tomorrow, maybe 7 p.m. UK time. But yeah, join me in my live tomorrow, guys. Again, as always, great questions, great chatting. Hopefully, you guys learned something new today. Check out my YouTube, some of the videos, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow. Have a wonderful evening. Love chatting with you guys. Hopefully 2026 is your year, and you know, to achieve your goals, whatever you set your mind towards. So see you later.